Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary. At Bet365, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast is here as we take a look at the Eagles, Bengals, and everything else that's happening around this team in this, very important game. They've won 3 straight. The Bengals have. The Eagles have won 2 straight. And everybody keeps asking the question whether or not the Eagles feel like they've turned a corner a little bit. And one thing is, you're playing a Bengals team that everybody seems to fear, Geoff Mosher, because the quarterback and the 2 receivers that they have. But the rest of this Bengals team, is this a Bengals team that people should legitimately fear when you look at the rest of the story, not just the high-end guys, the quarterback and the 2 receivers?
That's a good question, Mike. And I think in some ways the Bengals are similar to the Eagles in that you look up and down the 53 and you see guys like Burrow and Chase and Higgins, Trey Hendrickson, a pass rusher, and you say, wow, there's good talent. Cam Britt-Taylor is one of the best corners in the league. There's really good talent on this team. But if you look from a week-to-week basis, they just haven't really put it all together. They've won a couple of games that you say, is that really because they're that good? They beat the Giants 17-7. Is that impressive? And they beat the Browns, right? The Browns aren't that good, but I'm sure the Bengals and their fans and people analyzing them feel the same way that we feel about the Eagles, and that, all right, well, you're just happy they got a win because they started off the season so poorly, right? So I think it's an interesting matchup between 2 teams that have a lot of talent, have not necessarily fulfilled all the promise of that talent, are starting to put things together, and both have probably some weaknesses that the other team is going to try to capitalize on as much as possible.
Yeah, this is a team that obviously had high expectations the last couple of years. Injuries have kind of derailed them, much like the Eagles have going on right now. And one of the things the Eagles are looking forward to, I think, is getting some continuity on offense, Moshe. We've talked so much about their offense. But in your mind, how much is simply getting some continuity in the offense going to help them kind of push forward? And because, look, they scored 28 points last week, but it doesn't feel like a team, as we talked about yesterday, that had this high-flying offense. But how much of that could be continuity and helping them kind of, have that trajectory start pointing upwards a little bit more?
Yeah, Mike, that's a great question. We had this conversation, I think, maybe yesterday, in that, if you're going to average 28 points a game, and you can sign up for that, right, against, and especially putting it up against a good defense. Don't take anything away from the Giants' defense. Very good. Then you'll sign up for that, and you don't really care at the end of the day how you scored it, right, because 28 points a game is going to put you in the top 3 to 5 in the league. But if you're not – if you're only a big play offense and you're only explosive and you're not efficient, then that forces you then to make sure that your big play guys are always healthy, which hasn't been the case. And when the Eagles haven't had A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, they have not been nearly the same offense, right? Whereas if you were an offense that's a little bit more efficient, more deliberate, spreads the ball around, moves the chains on third down a lot more efficiently than they did against the Giants, where they're 1-13, and you get everybody involved, like the 2017 team or even 2022, if you want to bring that up, I feel like it equips you better to handle injuries, because now you're saying we know how to attack defenses with different players and different schemes, and we don't just rely on A.J. Brown to pull with his strong hands and get one on 4th and 3 that we threw down the field to him, because he's a difference maker. And if you don't have that difference maker and you can't compensate for it, then you're in trouble if these guys get healthy.
Yeah, I'm glad you led us down that road about what this offense can be. Jalen Hurts, top 5 in QBR completion percentage when he's inside the pocket. The problem is, outside the pocket, he is 18% of his dropbacks, he goes outside the pocket, and he really struggles with his accuracy there. I guess the question really is that something that's sustainable? Can you be a guy that can only operate in the pocket?
It's amazing what we're talking about. Jalen Hurts as a guy who can only operate in the pocket. all the damage he's inflicted outside of the pocket.
Well, real quick on that, I want to get, because yesterday there was somebody who texted in and said, I want to get your thoughts on this. And you talk to guys like Greg Cosell, and you watch a lot of tape. Some people texted in saying, Hurts is not an accurate thrower. And I'm like, it's not his accuracy that seemingly is the problem.
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all.
So, and these numbers say
strength.
that he's.
I would say that's his strength, his ball placement, especially on the deep balls, but on almost most of his throws, his ball placement is very good. In fact, you saw the difference, right, in the Giants game between him struggling and Daniel Jones struggling. Daniel Jones threw balls behind people. He threw wide at people. He sailed them over the head. Jalen Hurts doesn't do that. It's more of an issue of not making certain throws, and then the secondary to that is leaving the pocket too early, which takes away half the field and then forces you to make throws on the run when that's not necessarily always his strength. So, yeah, it's a different issue with him.
It is, and it's like this is a guy that you would think, hey, you could do some rollouts and get him moving and get him kind of throwing that direct, on the run. And it just seems odd that that's something, that he has really struggled with. We talked yesterday about the RPO and how teams have maybe kind of taken that away from him. And you wonder, like, is that what's limiting this offense? Is, man, he has limited the play caller's ability to call plays and expand the playbook more.
Yeah, I mean, Greg Cosell has talked about that a lot over the last few weeks, both with our Patreon members and these great live streams where our Patreon members get to ask him questions directly. And then, of course, on Inside the Tape, the one that came out today, we detailed a throw that he just, he's in the pocket. It's a mesh concept. I mean, he has Grant Calcaterra wide open between the numbers where if you throw it, you give Calcaterra the chance to then turn up the field. But he waited about 4 extra seconds to throw it and threw it outside the numbers. And you never want to throw a mesh concept outside the numbers because by the time the guy gets the ball, you've allowed the defense to catch up to it. And, of course, on that play that we isolated, Calcaterra, it was a second 11 or a third lay. He only was able to get 8 or 9 yards because the safety stopped him short. It was actually the play right before he missed Devontae Smith on the crosser, and then he throws the fourth down touchdown. I think one of the alarming things, Mike, is that in his press conference yesterday, Dylan was asked, can the offense survive being a, explosive play only type offense? And he made a remark, well, that's what we do and people are going to have to accept it. Well, all right. I mean, I wouldn't have gone down that route to say people just have to accept this about us. I mean, I think, again, the idea is to be a well-rounded, multi-dimensional offense that doesn't have to just rely on 4 or 5 big plays a game. Give your defense a little break, too.
Oh, absolutely. And look, when you come into this season before the season starts, I think everybody's looking at the team and saying, hey, this is a high-powered offense. You have Brown, you have Smith, you have Goddard, you have Barkley, and you have this offensive line. And for us to be asking all these questions and now coming to say, you got all these guys, who is holding you back? Well, it could be the guy that made $250 million is the problem. I can't believe in the 8th week of the season that's what we're discussing.
You and me both, my friend. You and me both. So, look, the good thing is that the Bengals defense has been very up and down all year long, and their front is not nearly. They have a great pass rusher in Trey Hendrickson, but it's not nearly as potent from 1 to 4 on the D line as say the Giants. So there should be emphasis on should be some opportunities here if you block it up and you give a little more time for him to work on some of these things that he hasn't mastered this year. And so the opportunity will be there to present itself. Whether or not he's able to, show signs of development remains to be seen there.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about the matchup up front with Hendrickson, obviously, as the main guy. We had a guy text in earlier. He said, I'm a Bengals fan. He said, don't be worried about this game. We can't stop the run. Last week we saw the Eagles go for 250 yards on the ground almost. Is this, second verse, same as the first, follow that blueprint until someone stops you?
You would think, the run game would be a big part of what the Eagles do. Now, I don't know that it's going to be every time you see a defense that struggles against the run, the fans are like, oh, we'll run the ball like 70% of the time. I don't think it's going to be like that. And I think, again, with the opportunity presented here, I think the Eagles would love to be able to also throw the ball in certain matchups and get Jalen Hurts going because they know that the recipe for them getting back to being a Super Bowl contender isn't just running the ball on every play. That's just not sustainable. And then, of course, Saquon has a history of injuries too. So you got to worry about the workload if you start giving him 10 to 15% more carries than you expected.
Yeah. Yeah, and, you're right. I mean, big picture, you can't run the ball and throw the ball 14 times and expect to win a championship. But it's a week-to-week league. Can you expect to do it and try to win a week?
You can. I mean, listen, I think they are going to try to run the ball, but I don't expect them to come out and run the ball 12 times on the first 16 plays or something like that.
No.
Yeah.
All right, let's. One of the matchups I'm interested to get your take on is the Eagles, 13 sacks. We talked about that with Vic Fangio mentioning yesterday. But my question for you more is, they got 13 sacks, and he kind of acknowledged, well, Daniel Jones holds the ball on. If they get to the quarterback again this week, this is another bad offensive line. The trade deadline's coming up. Do they look at themselves and say, you know what, I think we've turned the corner at getting to the quarterback, or do they also internally acknowledge we've done it against lesser offensive line competition? Is that something that is managed in the discussions?
Yeah, I think Howie Roseman's history, Mike, is if he can get a player that can help the team, whether or not it's an area of deficiency or not, he'll do it. Remember, they were a pretty good running team in 2017, and then they added Jay Ajayi. So it was like, whoa, we're already running the ball pretty well with LeGarrette Blount, with Corey Clement. I think Wendell Smallwood was part of the rotation at the time. They had a really nice offensive line. Carson was making plays in the run game. Nobody went into the deadline saying, man, the Eagles really need a running back, right? And then they wound up getting Jay Ajayi, and it just took them to another level. So I think defensive end, or pass rusher, I should say, edge, is a position Howie Roseman's always looking at. And if he feels that he can get somebody at a good price to come in and help, I don't think anything that the Eagles do between now and then would change that perception. In fact, wasn't it 2 years ago they set the record for sacks, and they still wound up trying to get they did. They got Robert Quinn, didn't they? That was 2 years ago, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, 2 years ago they got Quinn. Last year they got Byard. So they have gone the veteran route, trying to get somebody there. If they were to try to do – now, you mentioned the Jay Ajayi trade. What deal is that this year where you're like, man, they don't need that, but they went out and got it anyway?
Boy, that's a great question. That would probably be – well, I still think that this is debatable whether you think they need it or not, but it would not shock me at all if they somehow acquired a wide receiver.
And listen, you answered that, and you keep hearing their name tied to, Cooper Kupp's available. I heard DeAndre Hopkins before he got traded, a couple other guys at wide receiver. You keep thinking, really – they really have room for another wide receiver. They already gave up a third-round pick to get one who's not – I mean, is Dotson not a part – now, I know you were one of the people that questioned – that gave up a third-round pick and said, I don't know about that. Is it that he's not any good, or there's just not enough opportunities in this offense?
It has nothing to do with opportunities. All right? And I'll go back to the same thing I said when the trade happened. Your division rival traded him to you. What does that tell you? Mm-hmm. All right. We talked about how he did not endear himself to the new coaching staff in Washington, which is pretty obvious because they traded him, right? He's, at Penn State, this is one of those things that probably makes personnel people scratch their heads. At Penn State, he was a really good contested catch guy. I mean, he could go up and get the ball on anybody. Had really, for a short guy, I'm not short, but he's not like one of those 6'1", 6'2" type guys. He fought hard to get the ball when it was in the air, and you just haven't seen that at the professional level outside of maybe the first few weeks when he was with Washington. They had 4 touchdowns first 3 weeks, but you can jam him off his route pretty good. It doesn't always look like he's physically, invested there in his routes and in the game, and that certainly has translated. Yeah, there have been times where schematically he's been open. You could have thrown the ball and he didn't get it. Nick Sirianni doesn't trust that. But I watched the film. You're not seeing anybody making a difference, him making a difference when he's out there, and this guy was a first-round pick.
Well, that's the thing. Some people have suggested that, hey, he's open, he's just not getting the ball.
No, I mean, look, I know Malik Neighbors said that, after the Giants game, Eagles game, and yeah, there are definitely times where he was open and didn't get the ball, but it's not like when I watched it, the Eagles played a ton of too high coverage, Mike. I mean, they were clearly felt like they could get to the Giants off quarterback with a 4-man rush. They didn't need to blitz, and they were going to keep 2 safeties back. I didn't see a whole lot of, oh, man, Neighbors would have a touchdown here, Neighbors would have a touchdown there. So I think every receiver thinks he's open, and every coach can point out plays where a guy's open, but it's not like Jahan Dotson is, he's just being neglected or anything like that. It's not like that.
All right, Geoff Mosher, Football at 4 from the Inside the Birds podcast. The matchup this week that I want to get your take on is Eagles secondary, rookie Mitchell, Graybeard, big play Slay, and, of course, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. They got good guys there who, obviously trying to figure out what to do with Jamar Chase is tough. But do the Eagles feel that their secondary is where they wanted it to be when they kind of remade it last year?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think so, because you've got Cooper DeJean where you want him now at nickel. You've got Quinyon Mitchell, who I thought played a really nice game against the Giants. We even showed a clip today on the Inside the Tape with Greg Cosell of Mitchell just putting a heck of a jam on Malik Neighbors, which press coverage is not something he did for even a split second at Toledo, right? He didn't do it until he got to the Senior Bowl. And we all remember what the first 3 weeks were like for all of the Eagles corners, playing off, giving too much cushion. So that much has changed. We've seen more physical play with the insertion of Cooper DeJean over Maddox, and with Mitchell steadily improving week after week. Slay is still a decent enough corner. I don't know if he was what he was 5 or 6 years ago. And really your safeties in this situation, and I imagine Vic is going to want to do the same thing. So this, to me, is the game within the game that we talk about. Vic got away with playing his sort of trademark too high defenses, both safeties deep, keeping everything in front of you, limiting explosive plays, because he knew the Giants' offensive line was not very good, and he put faith in his front four to get to the quarterback, maybe a few rushes with Jacoby Dean, right, front four, front five. I know the Bengals' offensive line, we're sitting here saying it's not good. I don't think it's to the level of not good as the Giants' offensive line. They obviously have an issue with left tackle. They have an injury. Looks like they're going to play Cody Ford there. If Zeus Brown can't go or Orlando Brown can't go, they'll play Cody Ford there. Ford's really a right guard, having to play left tackle, so that's not optimum for them. And, of course, Amarius Mims is their right tackle, and he's a rookie, and he's a big, massive guy still learning the game. But I don't think that you just say, it's another bad offensive line like the Giants' offensive line. I think that it's probably better than the Giants' offensive line, and I think Joe Burrow – I don't think Joe Burrow. I know Joe Burrow is a lot better of knowing what he wants to do with the football or more so than Daniel Jones. So to me, this will be a test. Can Vic play his 2 high coverages? Can he keep those safeties deep against those prolific receivers and rely on the front 4 to get home? And I imagine that's how the game will start, Mike, and we'll see. This will be the question, right, that we've had the last 2 weeks. Is this front 4 Eagles pass rush now for real, or was it just taking advantage of a matchup? And we'll find out more about that early against the Bengals.
Yeah, I look at Burrow with these receivers and just fear like one of those Kirk Cousins games where he's just bang, 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 Baker Mayfield, bang, bang, and it's just high completion percentage. We were laughing earlier. The over-under for completion percentage, like 85% in this game, the way the teams sometimes go after the Eagles, the way they play defense.
I get it. I think it's a big concern. Again, I think we're going to learn a lot about the Eagles and how improved they really are after this game. I can't believe it. I looked this up. The Eagles have not beat the Bengals in almost 24 years.
Yeah, they tied them twice.
Yeah, they tied them twice. So they sacked them. I think they beat them up they got Burrow 7 times last time they played, and they still couldn't win the game. So, I think the concerns about the matchups are pretty legit. And if the Eagles come out of this game with a win, I think you say, all right, you're really starting to see the improvement here, and you can start to talk about the Eagles winning the division and getting back together. If they get embarrassed and give up, 70, 75% completion rate, Burrow throws the ball over them, you know what those discussions will be like on Monday.
All right, we'll have them right here on the Sports Bash. Geoff Mosher will be back on Monday. Game's at Cincinnati, and, of course, you can listen to the game right here on 97.3 ESPN, the coverage at noon. Merrill Reese, Mike Quick with the call at 1 o'clock. That's today's Football at 4. Geoff Mosher, take care, buddy.
Take care.